Good morning, everybody. I wanted to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about some of the trends that we saw in this past admission cycle that has just completed. And this is especially important for students who are sophomores or juniors right now to kind of hear what's happened this year, because we have to adjust as we hear what happened. I would say the first thing that we noticed was that our state schools that many students may use as a little bit of a safer possible option on their list got a whole lot harder this year, especially in majors that are very popular, but really much more difficult across the board. Why did this happen? Because so many out-of-state students are now choosing out-of-state colleges on their list to kind of supplement maybe some of the more selective colleges on their list. So that we saw like at Auburn, Wisconsin, those became much more difficult this year, significantly more difficult. I would add in that the UCs, for a different reason in terms of out-of-state colleges, also became more difficult because they decided to focus more on in-state students than out-of-state students. So those big state flagship universities, and even some that maybe weren't considered flagships, are becoming much more difficult. The second thing we have seen, if we look at the arc from probably 3 years ago, but especially during the COVID period, we have seen many of these selective colleges, let's look at the Ivies and those schools just under them, where they might have been hanging around 7 or 8% acceptance rates. They're eking into 4, some into 3. So almost cut in half. That is significant and is really impacting students. So those schools that were already super hard to get into really became even harder to get into. And so again, as one is creating a list, it would be highly risky to just have those schools on one's list. I would say the third thing that we saw is that activities are so important. What do you spend your time doing outside of the classroom is critical. And 2 places that I think this is becoming more and more critical. One is, what do you care about? What are you trying to impact in the world? You cannot show that through running after a bunch of community service hours. That has to be shown over an arc of time on something you care about, whether it's education, the environment. Doesn't so much matter what the issue is, but something that you're really trying to make better in your school community, in your city, in the state, those kind of things. Very, very important, and not something you can start in junior year. The other piece of that, which has been super important always, is the fit to major piece. So that when a college reads your resume, they can see why you're interested in engineering or English or history or pre-med. What I would say we saw in the fit to major piece this year is engineering, computer science, and pre-med have been exceptionally difficult for quite a few years and just kept getting more difficult. Business just joined the ranks. So business became much more difficult. So as you're thinking about your college list, you're thinking, how do I spread it out a little bit more? If there's one piece of advice out of this season, is students are going to have to go very broad on their college list and need to spend as much time on the maybe what they would call the lower end of their list than the top of their list, because nothing is guaranteed in this environment. And it's really important to have a list that you're happy with. Thanks.